Welcome to today's edition of Tea and Talks with myself, Owen Smith. Today we are joined by pantomime star Nigel Ellacott.
A dairy and a pet cow to look after. I mean, how do you manage to keep yourself looking so young and beautiful and youthful?
It's very kind of you to say so. It's all down to clean living and diet, I always feel, you know, because I'm on that seafood diet. It's amazing, yeah. Just seafood, eat it, and it's like the fat.
So thank you for joining me, Nigel. That was an outtake, was it, from a press call in Wolverhampton?
Yes, that was Wolverhampton Grand. That was Jack and the Beanstalk with Sherry Hewson, and also we had Ken Morley in it, and of course Keith Harris and Cuddles, bless, no longer with us, and Orville, of course, Orville the Duck. Yeah, that was one of the press calls.
Oh, how lovely. How is your lockdown going at the moment?
Yeah, it's fine, very busy. In fact, well, at the moment, what I'm doing is I decided to upload to my website, which is www.itsbehindyu.com. You have to put a little hyphen in there, its-behindyou.com. I decided to upload my 45 years of Panto.
Right.
Put it all in, 45 years. I didn't realise what a mammoth task that is. So having done that, it's now taking me ages just to upload it. So I think by the time lockdown finishes, I will have reached year 46 of Panto.
Just in time for year 47, as it were.
Well, let's see what happens.
That brings us beautifully to your Panto career. So 45 or 46 years in the business.
Longer, because I did my first pantomime when I left college. So I spent 3 years in teacher training college. But while I was in teacher training college, I was doing variety stuff and clubs and some television bits to get my equity card. I got my equity card in 1971. I was 2 years older at the time. Very, very, yeah. A very talented child. What happened was I got my equity card provisional in those days. So you didn't just get an equity card. In those days, you had to do 30 weeks work to qualify for a full equity membership. Now, 30 weeks work is a lot of work. So I did some clubs and I did some cabarets and I did some bits of television. And then I went to college to teach, teachers training college for 3 years. So while I was there, I didn't want to let the equity thing go down. So in about the first or second year, I was doing as much work as I could when I wasn't at college, building up I think if you did a weekend, if you did 2 gigs on a Saturday and Sunday, that counted as half a week.
Oh, right.
So I made myself very popular in getting jobs in local places, playing the piano and making a bit of money. I did some, I can't believe it now, but I did modelling work where I was on a catwalk. Anything you could do to build up the 40 weeks. And officially, I suppose, this would be coming up to Panto 47 anyway, because I did a small touring panto while I was in college as part of my work, and we took Dick Whittington around to some tiny theatres.
So how did you actually end up in pantomime?
You have to wind back. My brother was at the Swansea Grand Theatre, and he was one of the managers there. And as a kid, I used to spend a lot of time backstage or front of house. I would get to watch the pantomime rehearsals. I would get to go backstage and just help out in the box office. I can remember handing around flyers and posters in the market. In the wonderful days when people in the market, you'd give them a flyer, a poster to put on their stall, and in return you'd get 2 free tickets. Right. And they used to come along and they wanted 3 tickets. So what they do is they slip some bacon underneath the slot. This is absolutely true. They'd slip something, a bit of bacon underneath the box office counter to kind of cover the 3rd ticket. So I spent a lot of time backstage. I was very lucky as a kid. If I was very good and very quiet, I could sit and watch the rehearsals. I can remember vividly in the bar of the theatre and watching some, to me, very old people who were all wearing hats and coats. And they were all muttering to each other. And of course, now I know from experience that one comic would say to the dame, oh, I'm going to do the busy bee gag, right? Do you want to do the, which one do you want to do? Well, I'll do that one, right? How about the not here gag? Yeah, okay, well, if I'll do it, but we need a third person. They literally talked it through in the bar, and that's probably about it. The reason I did Panto, actually went into Panto, I think, is because of a dame we had at the Grand Theatre called Freddie Lees, who later became a friend of mine, an amazingly traditional dame. He was also the leading light of the Rep, which was weekly Rep. He used to come in and guest star in the Reps. He was a comic actor, and I was absolutely enthralled at the workings of it. So I was lucky. I got to see rehearsals. I got to see how things worked. And Freddie was the dame that I think I aspired to be, because what he taught me was to come onto the stage and then stand still. Mm. It was just a perfect stillness, so that any little gesture carried, any little movement carried. So people could be running around all over the place, and there was this still central figure, and I hope that I've kind of kept that through the years.
Panto runs were a very different kettle of fish back then, especially time-wise, weren't they?
Oh shit! We never opened a Panto until Boxing Day. That was tradition. Unfortunately, that meant when you were rehearsing, of course, you got to do your dress rehearsal on Christmas Eve. That was your dress rehearsal, and then you got Christmas Day off, and then first thing about 10 o'clock on Boxing Day morning, you were into your last dress rehearsal, ready to open at 2 o'clock. So people never went home in pantomime. All the pantomime companies used to stay in their digs. They used to, create. That's why Panto's, we say it's a Panto family.
And you didn't actually start as a pantomime dame, though, did you?
Oh, no. I would have been far too young. In those days, a dame, well, it still is, a dame is somebody's mother. Mm. And that's very tricky for a young actor to be the mother of a comic who might be in his 50s or 60s. So what my agent recommended to me, he said, look, if you're going to do anything in Panto, can you sing? Because if you can sing, you can be the prince. No, I can't sing. Right, okay, well, can you dance? No, I can't actually dance. And at this point, the agent's probably thinking, do you know what? Do I need him on my books? What would you like to do? I want to be a comic. Well, you can't be a comic, because in the pantomimes, all the comics are names. There'll be people from television. Oh, okay. You need to do something that nobody else wants to do in pantomime. Specialize in something nobody wants to. I know. And I was booked as my very first pantomime, I was lucky. I got to stand up and be a knight of the round table. That was Gawain and the Green Knight.
Nice.
Sherman, Cardiff. But the following year, I went into the same theatre thinking, here we go. I've been a knight of the round table, and they said, right, you're going to be a puffin. I didn't even know what a puffin was. And then they show you a picture, and it's like a kind of colourful penguin, only smaller. Right, and we'd like you to. Can you do some music for the show? So what can you play? I said, well, I can play a piano. I said, well, it's very difficult for a puffin to wheel a piano on. What else? I play a ukulele banjo. That's it. So my second panto, I was a ukulele playing puffin. And that kind of bird thing must have caught into my agent's mind, because the next thing you know, I'm booked as Goose, and I did 3 years of Goose in Mother Goose, which I cannot describe how uncomfortable playing Goose is in pantomime. It is really the job that nobody else wants. And I was lucky I got to do it for 3 years. You have a bandage. First they bandage your head. Then on top of that goes a sort of crash helmet. And on that is a 2.5 foot goose's neck, which is strapped here. And coming down in front of that, you've got 4 strings. So you've got the strings for the eyes, so you can make the eyelids flutter. You've got string to make the beak open. I also had a sort of water thing that made the goose cry. On top of that, you've got into a metal cage covered in feathers, where they've strapped your elbows to the wings of the goose. You've got webbed feet on. The director said, would you mind doing a bit of a tap dance as well? No, it's fine. You know, of course, yeah. So I've got tap shoes on. And I think the final indignity was I had a tail rudder stuck somewhere. And you go on stage, and it's the heaviest, hottest thing you've ever had. And your only line that you've got to learn is quack. And you don't even do that because you've got a duck call on a string in your mouth. 3 years of doing what nobody wants to do. But you know what? The money was good. My agent negotiated a very good deal. So I did 3 years of goose. I graduated to another animal, by which time I'm thinking, do I need an agent? Do I need a vet? I did Puss in Boots for 2 years running. And it was the end of that one that I was by now writing the pantomimes for the Kenneth Theatre in Ilford and costuming them. And we decided to do Cinderella. I was going to be the ugly sister. I didn't have anyone to do it with. And that's where the dressing up as a lady started.
For many years, you were teamed up with lovely Peter Robbins. How did that come about?
Well, here's Peter and me on the cover of our book. Yeah, you see wearing these ridiculous things on our heads, champagne buckets and all the rest of it, things that nobody else wants to do. Peter worked for the same agent as me. I had seen him occasionally on stage. He had seen me once on stage. He had played Ugly Sister the year before. My agent said, why don't you try working with Peter? And I said, well, I don't really know him. And the next thing I knew, we were put on an advert for lager. And the two of us were put sitting together in the set of a pub, drinking lager, which we didn't drink. And you wouldn't drink it anyway, because we started filming at 6 a.m. and by 9:30 at night, they kept coming around with a big sort of, I don't know what it was, like an icing tube, and frothing up this lager so it had a head on it. And by the time we got to 10:30 at night, Peter and I had worked out what we were going to say, what we were going to do, what we were going to wear, what we were going to make. We did it over a lager commercial. So we did that pantomime together, and something clicked. I don't know what it is. We just clicked together. We both had the same amount of energy. We both had the same style. And I can remember saying to Peter, shall we do it again next year? And he said, yeah, all right. And I said, look, if we're going to do it, we've got to do this seriously, because we have to specialize. I know this, to do pantomime, you have to specialize. So we will supply everything. So in those days, like, an actor would turn up to play Ugly Sister and they'd give him the costume, they give him the makeup, whatever, the wigs. We decided to specialize and make everything. So if we wore it, we provided it. Everything, every costume, every bit of footwear, every wig, all our props. Why don't we become, and in those days it was called act as known. So the contract said act as known, which meant they gave you a fee for everything. It was a higher fee than just going as an actor, but you had to provide everything. So Peter and I had a little deal going, whereby each week in our first panto, we put some money away into an envelope. During the year, we went out and bought material, had costumes made, had some wigs made. This envelope carried on for 28 years.
Out of all of these, what would be your favourite costume then?
Right, I'll start off by telling you the least favourite. We decided we wanted to be Christmas trees, but because we had a thing about every year we had to spend more money and we had to be bigger and better than anybody else, because that way we would get booked. So when we wanted to be Christmas trees, we had to be the biggest Christmas trees you'd ever seen and the tallest. So we got our wig makers, called Kevin and Jerry. Our wigs, by the way, are solid. So even though you might think a wig is like made of hair or no, these are solid wigs. You can drop them on the floor, you can bounce them, you can kick them. We wanted the biggest wigs that had ever been made. And when Jerry arrived at the Kenneth More Theatre and couldn't get them through the door, we knew we had a problem. So you put them on and your knees buckled with the weight of them. So they were a giant Christmas tree on top of the Christmas tree. The next problem is we're at the Mayflower Southampton doing this panto, which is a 2,500 seater. So we wanted it to light up so you could see it from the back of the 2,500 seats. The only thing that would do that was a motorcycle battery. So we've now got the heaviest wig in the world, the biggest costume, and strapped round our necks, hidden from sight, is a motorcycle battery, lighting up the sort of lights you should have outside Ilford Town Hall. So when you're bottom of the bill, we were almost the bottom of the bill. This is a funny thing. I don't know if everybody knows this, but the top of the bill gets the lowest dressing room, i.e. if you're the star of the show, you get number 1 dressing room, which is right next to the stage on the ground floor. If you're at the bottom of the bill, you go up 2 or 3 flights to the very top. That's where we were. We clambered in to the Christmas tree costumes, got in the massive lift, like a goods lift at the theatre, started to go down towards the stage. The lift stuck.
Right.
We can't move. Nobody can get us in or out. We can hear the scene carrying on, the scene that we're in. We hear our entrance not happening. We hear our entrance finished. We pressed the button and back up we went again. Took them off. Never wore them again. That is the least favourite. The most favourite, I mean, I suppose I love the ball gowns which Margaret made. They are stunning, the ones now at the V&A. But to be truthful, the costume that you like the best is the one that gets the biggest laugh as soon as you walk on. And that can be a costume that maybe we spend £1,000 on a big costume, gorgeous costume. We might spend £60 on a silly costume, and that might get a big laugh. That's the one you like the best.
Now, I remember when I was younger, you and Peter became the faces of the Royal Mail.
The Royal Mail contacted us and said, we'd like you to be the face of the post office. You go, really? Do you? When they announced where we would be doing the photo shoot, I was very impressed because I could always say, I've been to RADA. What we didn't know about the RADA, there was a big hall where we had the photos taken in, but the dressing rooms then, I think they must have changed now, were underground in the cellar of RADA, in the middle of London. I think the head clearance was 4'11" to 5 foot. So basically you ducked when you went into the dressing room area, remained crouched, sat down, did your makeup, remained crouched, left. We did this 12 times during the photo shoot, but I did it 11 because on the 12th, I kind of woke up and Peter was fanning me. And apparently I'd finished my makeup, stood up triumphantly, knocked myself out. So I can remember vividly. Our cardboard cutouts, Peter and me as the Ugly Sisters, were in every post office in Britain. We were on something called Smileys, which was a kind of stamp that I think you put on the, it wasn't a real stamp, you put it on the back of the envelope. All sorts of things in the campaign. And it's come back to bite me because about 3 or 4 weeks ago, I got a message from the Postal Museum to tell me that they've got Peter and me in their archive. So our cardboard cutouts are there for posterity.
So that means that you are now in 2 museums?
No, I'm in 3.
Oh, really? 3?
Well, I was in 3. I don't think I'm there anymore. Last October, I did something for Stevenage Museum. And what they wanted was when you walked into the museum, kids especially, you were greeted by a pantomime dame. That was me. And I'd say, come along, come a bit closer. Oh, this is a pantomime. Now, blah, blah, blah. I bet you want to wear a costume, don't you? And then you'd say, well, look behind you. And the kids would turn around and there are all these costumes they can try on. And I filmed that. It only took a day, but it's the most frightening experience I've ever had, I think, because it was filmed in 4K.
Right.
And the camera is so sharp and so literally in your face. I've never seen quality like it. I made the poor cameraman go probably about half a mile down the road before I let him put the camera on me. It is quite a frightening thing to see your face blown up in 4K. So yeah, three museums, mate.
Which gives us actually a nice segue into the fact that you've been associated with costumes at the Kenneth Theatre for the last 40 odd years.
As long as, I suppose it is. It came through necessity. I can remember when Vivian, my brother, opened the theatre. The first 2 years, he hired costumes for the pantomime because the theatre had no stock. Then we bought 2 sets of costumes from Cyril Fletcher. Now, some of the more mature viewers of your programme will remember that Cyril Fletcher, then remember him as the funny man on That's Life with Esther Ransom.
Oh, yes.
Oddodes. Do you remember him?
Yes, I do.
Well, he and his wife Betty ran a very successful pantomime company, and Cyril used to play Dame. So they sold the Kenneth More Theatre 2 sets of costumes, which they used for years, and they started to get a bit tatty. So we decided, I would have thought the theatre had been open about 6-7 years before we decided to make costumes. Now, I can't make anything. I can't use a sewing machine. I can't, but I can draw costumes. And all a design is a drawing. So if you do a drawing of a costume, that is a design. And then the most magical thing was getting Margaret Bryce, who was at Berman and Nathan's, the very, very top theatrical costumiers. Margaret, who lived in the area, decided that she wanted to leave Berman's and sort of retire, really. Well, she wasn't given the chance. She went to the Kenneth More Theatre, and she and I, for many, many, many years, probably 35 years, something like that. I've certainly costumed you in many a pantomime.
Many an outfit. From a cat to a fairy.
Yes, the cat and a rat.
And a rat.
Ratatouille. So yes, I did that for 35 years, I suppose.
So as well as being sort of like one of our best known dames, as there are, you are also in charge of the itsbehindyou.com website, which is probably the greatest theatrical insight into pantomime that there is online.
Well, thank you very much. That came through necessity. I think it's been going 20 years now, the website. I set it up with Simon Curtis. Now, Simon has a connection with the Kenneth More Theatre because Simon was an actor and a singer who performed in shows at the Kenneth More Theatre. Then he went off, strangely enough, he went to Cardiff and worked for the WNO, and he now works for Equity, the Actors' Equity. 20 years ago, I can remember dial-up, where you spent hours waiting for the computer to kind of put you onto the web page, and that's going to happen to us very soon in this lockdown. There's so much usage of the internet now, it's slow. But 20 years ago, I decided to tap in pantomime into the internet and see what came up, and all that came up was the Little Haddon Players. And the Little Haddon Players, an amateur company, had a website all about Panto. There was nothing else. And I thought, well, this is crazy. So when you type into the search engine, and the search engine is American, like Google was, is pantomime in America means to mime. It means to do something without speaking. So Americans call pantomime. If you say, I'm doing pantomime, they say, oh, do you have like a striped shirt, and is it like Marcel? No. So only in this country does pantomime mean British pantomime. So that's why we started. We started the website 20 years ago. It's still going. It's got one of the biggest diaries. I do a blog every year as Dame Backstage, and it's really grown. It's bigger than I ever thought it would be. In turn, that sort of launched Peter and me doing our Panto Roadshow, which we did for years. I still keep it up. I do a couple of theatres a year. That was a spin-off from the Pantomime website.
And the Panto Roadshow, how would you describe it?
We go to schools. We don't want to do it in a theatre. We want to do it in schools. We want to take, and we have done the Panto Roadshow now. I think it must be about 23 years old, probably longer. We want to take it to the schools. Maybe it's to go to a school to show children who've never seen a pantomime, never been to a pantomime, what a pantomime is all about. But we don't give them a pantomime.
Right.
Because if we took a pantomime into the school, they might go, well, we've seen a pantomime, so we won't go to the local theatre and see the panto. And they've got to do that. We say to the kids at the end of every Panto Roadshow, pantomime is when you and your mates go into a dark auditorium. They know by then what the auditorium means. And the lights go down and live actors come on the stage. It's not a video. It's not a DVD. You can't have a pantomime at home because you have to be with your mates. You have to shout out. That's why we go to the schools, and we take a show which is all about, the show's about being backstage in a pantomime and something goes wrong and the kids see somebody make up as a dame in front of their very eyes. They see quick changes, they see some pantomime, but it's all about putting on a panto.
Out of all the theatres you've played in your 47-year career, what's been your favourite?
Birmingham Hippodrome.
Really?
Birmingham Hippodrome is my favourite theatre. It's really, I suppose, it's one of the major sites for pantomime in the country. It's a massive theatre. It's got a good tradition of very, very good quality shows. Even going back to the old days, it's always had a huge reputation. I love Birmingham Hippodrome. I love Nottingham Theatre Royal, another beautiful big theatre. I love Venue Cymru, which is in North Wales, which is a modern theatre. It's not like the old theatres. It's a huge modern theatre, which currently is doing an enormous job. It's been the main bulk.
Hospital, isn't it?
It is a hospital, yes. The main bulk of the arena has become the Rainbow Hospital, and that's a very marvellous thing to be doing. Those are probably my three favourite pantomime. Oh, and I'll throw one more in, Bournemouth Pavilion. I love Bournemouth Pavilion.
Out of all of them, though, is there any that you wish you had have played?
The Palladium.
Right.
And the Swansea Grand Theatre. I've played the Swansea Grand Theatre in plays. I've done a little musical there. I've done kid shows there, but I've never done a pantomime. It's my hometown. It's where I used to sit, bringing us back to where we started, watching a dame like Freddie Lee's rehearsing, thinking, oh, look at all that, this is magic. I would like to do a panto there to just close the circle, I think. But definitely, of all the pantomimes you could ever want to be in, the London Palladium has to be the one.
Well, let's hope everything goes as it can this year for them, and we'll be back in the theatres as soon as we can be.
I hope so, because I've done, like I say, 46 pantomimes. I've never had a season I haven't done a pantomime. I cannot imagine not being with a panto family over that Christmas period. It's something I can't envisage. So what we've really got to do is just look to the future. That's what we've got to do, is stay in, stay safe, and look positively to the future.
Well, thank you so much for joining me virtually today, as it is.
It's my pleasure.
We'll speak soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Owen. Bye-bye.
Bye.